Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I want to talk about the trailer for The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon Season 2 because there's actually another trailer that came out that does show some new footage, and there's actually some scenes of Carol and Daryl together. And so yeah, I want to talk about all that. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. I just posted my House of the Dragon review. It's sort of my review of the final episode, but I also give my thoughts on the whole season just in general. And yeah, definitely go and check that out if you're interested. But yeah, I do want to talk about this here. So Daryl and Carol, obviously that the reunion between these two characters, we're all waiting to see, right? We're all waiting to see these two characters reunite. And it's kind of hilarious because in the trailer that came out at Comic-Con, they really tried to avoid showing that at all, which I do think is smart. I mean, I guess that is sort of, one of the more exciting aspects to the season. I mean, we all know what's going to happen. Norman Reedus was even saying that, like, it's kind of silly to act like it's not going to be happening or sort of talk about season 2 like, oh, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's like, what's going to happen this season, obviously. But I do think just sort of like not talking about it, just sort of in general, like you don't want to confirm too much too early, right? Like that's one of those things where you confirm too much way too early and it just makes it more, I guess that by the time the show airs, it's not as surprising. I mean, we still don't know how it happens. There's so much more context to this. And even the scenes that we saw here from one of the trailers that came out, again, you still don't know how it happens or when it happens. And that really is the most important thing. All people care about is when you're watching The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon season 2 next month, that you're just there in the story. And so this trailer actually got released, I think it was internationally. I'm not entirely sure exactly where it came from, but this kind of stuff happens a lot. Just different countries have like different versions of trailers. And so you'll see different footage from this or that. And it looks like the main difference here was that for the Comic-Con trailer, what they did with these 3 shots specifically was basically just zoom in on other characters and crop out other characters. And so you have this shot right here of Daryl and Carol obviously together here. And I think they're outside of Quinn's nightclub. I mean, it depends. This could be a totally different place, but we know Anne is here, right? And so Daryl came here with Carol to speak with Anne about something, I'm guessing related to Madame Genet, and I don't know what's going on with the story at this point here, but yeah, he's here with Carol, and it's hard to say exactly what is happening in the story at this point. Like, really, this season, I would say it's kind of hard to predict, I guess where the story is going to go, but it was like that, before we got the trailer, and even really after we got the trailer for season 1. Like, if you remember going into The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon season 1, it was really hard to know what the story was going to be because the trailer really just sort of set it up as Daryl is in France and you saw Madame Genet for like a second, but you had no idea there was like research going on, and that they were, experimenting with variant walkers and that the walkers came from America, and like you had no idea of any of that. We all learned all that information after episode 1, right? So after we watch episode 1 of this show, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of information that we do learn as well. And that's one thing AMC's been really good at, in terms of the story, like the actual bigger story elements for the spinoffs. We don't really know what the story is at all, pretty much going into the first episode. And after watching the first episode, you're like, oh wow, this is really good. So yeah, really cool to see Daryl and Carol here. But we have this other shot here where we do see Daryl and Carol and they're killing walkers. And this is obviously related to that one shot. I think it's this one here where we see Daryl in the van, and I imagine at this point here Daryl and Carol end up trapped in this van and there's a bunch of walkers everywhere, and it's really hard to say where this happens because I mean this could happen in episode 5 or episode 6, right? Like I'm trying to base it off the outfits because like Carol obviously has her jacket on here, but in this shot she doesn't have her jacket, right? And this is the very final shot of the trailer, but again, she could have just took her jacket off. I mean, it looks like Daryl also took his jacket off, so it's one of those things where they could either reunite in episode 2 or 3. Like, I don't think it's going to be the finale. For sure, I don't think it's going to be the finale. Could I see it being in episode 4 or 5? Maybe. The one thing about this show that could be different compared to The Ones Who Live is that this show is going to be going on for many more years, right? And so I could see them taking their time with this, where you have Carol having her own story just sort of separately, because we know because of the synopsis that came out that I think Carol is going to be on the opposing side of all of this. And so it's possible Daryl deals with a bunch of stuff with like Isabel and all of that, at the nest, and Carol is with Madame Genet, not knowing she's evil and all that, but obviously maybe over time learns. And then eventually maybe that's how she finds Daryl, because, she ends up with Madame Genet and she's hearing all these references to the American, right? That's sort of how she described Daryl in season 1. So I could see Carol being like, okay, so I wonder if she's talking about Daryl, so I'm gonna have to stay, close here because I might be able to actually find him, and then maybe eventually that's what happens, and that's like episode 4 or 5, and I could see maybe that being how Daryl gets out of, it looks like he's captured at one point. We see how he does get out, but I wonder if it's because Carol also does help him. I don't know, but I just look at filming, and again, I didn't really follow filming at all. Like, I would see certain things pop up, but I didn't really follow it at all, but it was mostly Jeffrey Dean Morgan posting that tweet or whatever, and it had Daryl and Carol together, and they were like on a bridge, and I was like, okay, I think at that point they were filming episode 2 or 3, so that's why for me, I'm expecting it to be around that point, but who knows? Maybe it happens later on. Maybe they filmed out of order a little bit. We have this one shot here of Madame Genet, and it looks like Lo Sang is here as well. And this could be the nest. It's possible that it is the nest. It's kind of hard to tell, but it looks like at this point, Madame Genet is most likely going to be capturing Lo Sang and Daryl. So I'm assuming that they find the nest, because that was a whole thing in season 1, like they can't find the nest, this and that, or at least at the end it was like, does she know where we are? Also, in the very opening minutes of season 2, it's mentioned quite a bit. If you haven't checked out the opening minutes for season 2 of Daryl Dixon, I really recommend doing so, because it's actually available right now to watch on AMC Plus. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking it out. But they do talk about the idea of like Madame Genet finding them, and her and her group Pouvoir are getting closer, right? And so I imagine at some point, maybe this is episode 3 or something, Madame Genet actually finds them, captures Daryl and Lo Sang, and then we'll see what happens at that point. Like, I don't know at what point the variant walkers are going to play a role in a lot of this, because I know they are working on that and the research is going to be getting a lot better and better, but there is also something that was teased about there being a better variant walker, or I don't know if it was a variant walker, but something else that will happen at the end of the season. So I don't know what that is. If it's just a new type of walker and not really a variant walker, like in terms of a super walker anyways. But Madame Genet does seem to attack the nest and will take Daryl and Lo Sang. I'm not sure, what's going to happen to, I guess, Isabel and Laurent at that point, if they're going to be more connected with Carol and maybe leaving. Maybe that's why they go to Spain originally. But I guess this is probably going to happen like halfway through the season. So they're probably not going to Spain right away, right? I still do think that they're probably going to lose the nest. Like, in my opinion, I think that it just makes sense to actually lose that place because they are filming in Spain. Like, I don't see a reason to really, that's one of those things that where it comes to filming, you're just like, well, I know that they're not going to be showing us this or that because of, certain reveals like that. It was the same thing with The Ones Who Live. Like, we all knew that they weren't going back to Alexandria because everything in Alexandria was taken down, right? All the sets and everything. So we already knew that, like, well, there's no way they're going to go back there because all the sets are taken down, right? So, yeah, I think Daryl and Carol reuniting at some point in like episode 2 or 3 would be pretty cool. I think that, this way you would have all season with them together. But then again, I think the show's going to be good no matter what, even if they're not reunited. And maybe you want to build up to that and make it really epic. And again, we still have seasons and seasons to go with these characters. And so it's not like this is just going to be it afterwards, right? So yeah, really incredible trailer. I'm so excited to just like talk about the trailer a lot more because I want to focus on some of the actual storyline with Pouvoir and what they might be trying to do, some of the bigger story, and also some of the new villains that they're probably going to set up for season 3. Like, I don't know if Madame Genet is going to die here in season 2. It's possible. Maybe she actually dies, but there's going to be some sort of build to season 3 because it looks like Carol and Daryl are going to try and get away or something like that, but they end up in Spain, which is very close to France, so it's not like they're completely abandoning the story. Obviously, they're just more forced to run away from Madame Genet and the variant walkers most likely, and so wherever they end up in Spain, who knows where the story is going to be at that point, but we can talk about that in a couple of months once we actually, finish watching Daryl Dixon season 2 and start focusing on season 3 and where the story could go at that point. So yeah, but I'm gonna leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below on when you think Daryl and Carol are going to reunite. Personally, for me, I'm really curious on how they're going to do the build up for that moment, because is it a big reunion? It kind of is, but it's not as big as Rick and Michonne's reunion, right? I feel like with them reuniting, it was very different because they both thought that, I guess Rick never thought Michonne was dead, but Michonne thought that Rick was dead, right? And so learning that he was alive and just seeing him for the first time again, it was just such a big reunion that was also built up over several years, right? Like, yes, we haven't seen Carol in like, what, almost 2 years now. I mean, we saw her at the end of at the end of season 1 in Daryl Dixon, but I don't really include that as her first appearance. To me, the last time we saw her was the end of The Walking Dead, because that was sort of a cameo scene, I would say, at the end of episode 5. We never really got to spend time with her and learn what her story is, right? So I think that in season 2 here, to actually see her again, you know, spend some time with the character and then focus a lot more on that story, on her search for Daryl and how that builds up to actually finding him, how the moment's gonna work, the music building up the moment and whatnot. Is it gonna be very emotional? I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Like, I don't know how emotional it's going to be. I feel like as of right now, it wouldn't be too emotional, but if they built up the right parts of the story where Carol is really, you know, going through a lot and she really needs Daryl, and Daryl is just missing everyone back home and is really struggling, you know, just both of them seeing each other, I think that's where you can make it a really incredible reunion. So I'm really excited to see how they're actually going to pull this off, how they actually do this scene overall. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna leave it here. Make sure to post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.